My story is a little bit heavy, but it's okay. You helped me hearing yours. So I want to talk about our stories. Everyone loves a good story, but a lot of us hide our bad stories. We hide our stories of the times that define us and the stories that really make us who we are. My story started when I realized who I wanted to be like. I want to be like my idol, and that person is my father. By the time my dad was 26, he had 5 little rugrats running around, and we grew up in humble beginnings. We didn't have a lot growing up, but my dad always instilled in us that if we had each other, we had love, that everything else would work itself out. And he is a very selfless man, and I always admired that about him. Not only with us, he gave anyone he came into contact with all the love that he had. He was always willing to help people and put himself second. And I love that about him, and that's what I wanted to do with myself. But there was another thing I caught from him. I saw that he didn't let people see his struggles. And even though he had a lot of them, he always had a smile on his face and always put his best foot forward. So I thought in my mind that's what I had to do. But by doing that, I hindered my ability to really connect with people because I wasn't open with telling them the pain that I had inside of me. So I always gave people the beauty I had, and I kept everything ugly for myself. So I continued to be like him. And growing up, it was very hard because I went through a lot of things and I wasn't able to talk to people about it. I didn't know how to express the things that I was going through. And I didn't want people to worry about me or to put any of my pain on somebody else because they cared and they loved me. So an outlet that I found that helped me cope with the things that I was going through was track. I love to run. I was pretty good in my day. And track really helped me cope with a lot of things that I was going through. And through track, I felt a sense of purpose, fulfillment, and best of all, it gave me opportunity. It led me here, and I really put track as the first thing in my life. It was everything I was. I was definitely the athlete student and not the student athlete. And to me, in my head, track was going to be the way that I was going to be successful. And it did a lot for me. It gave me a lot. So in return, I gave it my hard work and my dedication. And it was really all I had to cope with the things that I was experiencing, the things that I hid from people. And finally, I got a little beauty back. Going into my junior year, I just came off a great season. I made all the way to our championship meet. I scored. I earned a better scholarship. So my junior year, getting ready for the new season, a week before our first meet, I found out I was pregnant. And me being who I am and how I was raised, I stood up to my responsibilities, and I told myself that I wasn't going to stop living my life. I was going to do what I had to do and be a mom and be a student and be an athlete and be everything that everyone was encouraging me to be. But all in this while, I was still experiencing a lot of things that were going on. And I like to be a person who was low-key. I was never in the spotlight, really, and I liked it that way because in my head, I thought if too much light was on me, people would see the things that I was hiding. And being the first female athlete here at UB to be pregnant while still in competition and go on and continue to compete, it was very hard, being judged by a lot of people. A lot of people were looking at me and a lot of people were talking about me. And it was very hard on everyone, even the administration here. I was kind of the person that you didn't want to be. So I got a lot of judgment of that way. I was basically an example for most of the female athletes here. So it was very hard, but I continued to fight through it, and I didn't talk to anyone about the things that I was going through. So after I had my daughter, I was going into my senior year, getting ready to compete, I had to take a summer class, stats, hate that class, took it 3 times. And they said, if I don't pass this last time, I'm gonna lose my scholarship and all this other stuff. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pass this time. And I drove up right before my finals to take my daughter to stay with my parents so I can focus and pass that stats class. When I came back to Buffalo, it was the first time I was alone in a very long time. And a lot of my ugly was spilling out of me. And that night before my final, I tried to commit suicide. And it was a failed attempt. Thank God my roommate found me and she called the ambulance. And I can remember waking up in the hospital with the 2 people that were there, and automatically I just started telling jokes because the thing I know best is to say dumb things so people don't really understand what's going on at that time. And I just wanted to go back to regular life and pretend it never happened. But me thinking I'm gonna get, you know, patched up or whatever and sent on home, the nurse had to admit me into the psych ward at the hospital for evaluation before they could release me. And there's 2 things I experienced my time there. The greatest amount of fear I'll ever experience and the greatest amount of peace I have ever experienced. Going in there, it's not easy. There were people obviously that were on drugs and it was just really crazy and we're all crammed in one room. It's not like they gave you your own space. So during here, I was very scared, even though I grew up in a place where I saw people like that around. It was very close. And I just sat there. I tried to seem normal so they can let me go, that I wasn't that. And in my head, I kept telling myself I can't be this crazy. And a woman had walked in the room, and she didn't seem like anything was wrong with her. It just kind of seemed like she owned the place. And she's walking right around, she's walking around, and she's looking at me, and she walks up to me, and she said, I've been to many places like this, and I know when someone doesn't belong, and you, my dear, you do not belong here. And she sat down. So we're just chopping it up and talking, and she finally asked me why I was in there, and I told her I had a very dark night. And she said, I know a lot about those. Then I asked her, why was she in here? And she said she admits herself into these places when she wants to drink. And she said, they got to keep me here for 48 hours, so I have time to think about it, and I end up not drinking, and if I want to drink, I go to the next spot. And then I'm just like, wow. So I asked her, why does she want to drink? And she was really beating around the bush, and you can tell that she didn't want to talk about it, or, you know, I could tell that she was like me. She wanted to veer from what was really going on with her. And then as she began to be more comfortable with me, she started to tell me that she has 3 children and grandchildren, and she didn't know how to love them. So I asked her, why doesn't she know how to love them? And she veered from that question too, until she finally told me that her and her sister were raped by her father growing up. And so she told me, how can she love someone if she never experienced love? And at that moment, when I was listening to her talk, she didn't cry at all. She was just talking like it was nothing. And it's kind of selfish, but I felt peace because I could finally relate to someone who had pain in them. So for me, it was a peaceful moment because I finally connected with someone, even though I never got a chance to tell her why I tried to do what I did. I still had someone there that knew. She knew I was in pain. She didn't even have to hear my story to know that I was hurting inside. And at that moment, something came over me, and I grabbed her hand, and I told her I loved her. And she started crying, and I'm like, girl, don't cry. I'm trying to get out of here. I'm trying to get out of here. Please don't cry. They're going to think I'm crazy, too. And then she started laughing, and she just told me she loved me, too, and we talked about other stuff. And finally, when they called my name, after a couple of hours, I think I was in there for like 10 hours, worst 10 hours of my life, she told me I better never see you in a place like this again, and I said I better never see you either. And even though that was 3 years ago, I hope she's doing well. But I left that place, even though you are the first people I'm expressing this story to, and it took me still long to talk to people, but I found happiness in my little one. And I told myself that I wasn't gonna ever try to check out again, and that the person who my dad tried to instill in me is still in me, and that I will start connecting with people on a level that, even though he didn't teach me, that I know that will help me. And I left there, I graduated, and I had 2 more years to compete, so I'm finishing my 2nd undergrad, and I continued to run. Despite all the obstacles that I still had to face, being a single parent and still being in school and having to bring her to class and having to do all these things, it wasn't easy, and it's not always the best light, but I know that she will gain something from it one day, and I have gained something from it one day. So my purpose of why I wanted to tell my story was that in hopes that people will tell their ugly stories too. And it's the way that we'll connect with each other. It's the way that people will draw closer, because we all have our ugly stories, whether it's trying to commit suicide or losing someone very close to you. And through that, I believe that people will be stronger and people can save themselves by sharing what tried to kill them.